Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Amanda.
And we are part of a team of project coordinators here at GenStone, available to you for on-demand help. And today we're going to take a look at one of our most popular uses for GenStone, using it to add the look of stone or brick to your steel building.
It's no secret that while steel buildings are safe and secure, most could use an increase in curb appeal, especially if your building is being used for your business, a church, or even a garage near your home.
Not only does GenStone increase your building's curb appeal, it also adds R value, as the panels install easily over your steel building's existing metal siding.
For this installation video, we're actually going to go on location with one of our customers named Tony in Oklahoma, and he was kind enough to document his install step by step.
Okay, so we're gonna get started with the first stripping. So on a metal barndominium, we have these ribs here. Now there are different size ribs for different material that you get. There's what's called an ag siding, metal siding, and it's typically a much deeper ridge than what this is. And so the first thing that I figured out was, what do I need in a depth so I can be flush with the GenStone across here? So in measuring this here, we are able to determine that actually a 3/4 of an inch or 1x2 would work perfect. So that's what we got started with. It's really best to fasten the GenStone into these wood shims and first strips than it is trying to go in through the metal. So what we had to do is we had to calculate out the distance from the top edge of this rib, metal rib, to the bottom. Now you can get different panels of metal for your barndominium, and they become in different thicknesses and height of this rib. It happened to be that this rib here was exactly 3/4 of an inch in depth from the surface to the depth here, which meant that a 1x2 first strip would work out perfect since it's 3/4 of an inch. So that was our first part that we investigated into to make certain how much of a thickness of this first strip that we were going to need. The next was to determine the overall height. So each panel of the GenStone, of course, when you measure it, okay, each panel is coming in, you know, at 12 inches. So we wanted to make certain that our first strip was going to cover our first, second, and third, but also when we put the ledger here on top, we want to make certain that we have some of that first strip so that we can attach that ledger you know, into that first strip. Now I'll show you something else in a close-up picture here. As you can see, and I'll show you and talk more about this, is when you put your ledger on, you're going to have a gap in between here, and you're going to need to figure out, how do I fill this gap? And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But you got to make certain that your first strip doesn't come up too high, because you won't be able to put this filler behind it. I hope that makes sense. So now we need to get busy, and we need to cut a lot of first strips to go all the way down the line. And we're going to get busy doing that. And then we're going to start fastening these first strips in between each rib, and we're going to be using deck screws that can get into the metal, and I'm putting in 3 of those deck screws for every first strip that we're going to put in line. Now the other thing that we're getting ready to do as soon as we get all the first strips up is it's important that the first layer of GenStone, you've got a good straight line, a good height to go with all the way down. You can see here that I've got my red line already snapped, which I will continue once we're ready. But the next step is we want to get all these first strips cut, and we're going to get them in place. now that we have all of the first strips cut and we've got everything laid out ready to go, and we're going to be putting a first strip in between each of the rib extensions, so we have plenty of room to be able to screw and fasten the GenStone. Now, one of the things that you'll need to do is to drill some pilot holes in these first strips, because they will split on you when you're trying to screw them in. And for the height that we're doing, which is 3 sections high, we're putting in 3 holes and pilot holes. We're using the deck screws. They're 1 5/8" deck screws. These will go in. Now we have OSB behind the metal here, but if you have a barndominium that's just all metal, these screws will work just fine. So we're going to go through and we're going to get all of these first strips in place before we're ready to start putting in the GenStone. We have just completed putting up all of the 1x2 furring strips. We'll have a little notch down for the windows that will have to be done, and a stopping point at doors. And we're doing a 3/4 wrap, and here's where we'll be cutting and making the notch for the windows. And that's pretty much it. So now the next step's going to be to get started on getting things prepped to install the GenStone. If you remember, if you've watched any of the other videos, they are 4 different molds on the flat portions of the GenStone. And so we'll be setting out all of these molds so that we can stagger them so that everything doesn't, fall one behind the other. We're now ready to get started with the base run. Now, what we've done is we have set out all of our panels. Like I said before, there are 4 different molds, and we've laid these out so that we know that we're staggering the molds. So we have those set up ready to go. The next thing is to set your baseline. So what we've done is we've come up and we've done a chalk line, and we've done a chalk line all the way down to set our baseline and where we're going to be even all the way down. So that way we have a very, very good fit. Everything will be flush and everything will be square. Next will be to go ahead and start assembling the panels onto the barndominium and onto the first strips. And of course, what we have here is what is provided. Now, the big stretch that you see here, that is provided by GenStone, but then to secure the GenStone to the wood furring strips, we're using the Loctite PL3 Time Strong Premium adhesive. And we'll get started with that, and we'll let you see that process. So I have my baseline set, and we're ready to go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first piece and I'm going to just dry fit that, just to make certain that everything is in line. Everything's going to fit just fine. That looks good. Once again, we're going to use the PL3 Loctite on the wood. We'll start with that, and then we're going to come back. As we continue to go, you'll see me using the big stretch. Now, for the screwing of these to the first strips, I'm using a 2-inch deck plus screws, and then we're gonna hide those in there, and then we come back and then we'll finish that off. I'm gonna go ahead and do the second layer so I can show you the big stretch and how we'll be adhering the big stretch. Now wherever you have 2 pieces of GenStone meet, that's where you want to apply the big stretch. So in this case, we're going to be putting this panel in. So we're going to apply a very thin line of big stretch. Making certain that everything butts up. Everything's fitting nice and square. We've offset our panels. Now we're going to go ahead and secure that one. Now we'll continue this process and we'll keep adding our layers. We'll cut out around the windows, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how we're set up the ledger and the fill-in piece in the back here on the top here, and we'll show that to you next. We have all of our panels set. We've completed that now, and now we're ready to put the ledger on. And obviously the ledger is going to come up on top like this. We have our first strips sticking up so that after we put our glue here and the big stretch glue here, and we come in and we fasten the ledger here to the top. But the big thing is that what do we do about this gap that's back here? Now, there are different types of paneling, metal paneling that's used. There's the AG panels, there's the CFS panels, and then there's SSP panels. And the SSP panels is what you're seeing here. Now, to take up that gap that's in the back, you're gonna wanna go to your local metal supply company, and what you're gonna ask for is, it's called an OS closure strip, for, in this case, an SSP panel. Now, this is what they look like. They come in 4 to a strip, and they have adhesion on them. And so what's going to take up that gap, and you have the type that are a male side and a female side. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to be putting these in place in the right position, and then once we do that, when we put the ledger on, it's all going to be sealed. So the first step that we're going to do is we need to get our height measurement. So what we're going to do is we set the ledger in place, and I want to make a pencil line, small little pencil line, so that I know exactly where to place that strip. Now, even though it has adhesion on this strip, and once we place that strip in here, you're going to see that it still can be moved a little bit so you get a good flush fit. Now over here we have a gap, so our first strip will be offset, we'll cut it, but then at the ends it's like a dovetail joint. you have the male side and you have the female side. So we can run our strips down the line. So let's get started. As you can see, we now have attached the OS closure strip for the SS panel. And that is this one here. And we pretty much have it just kind of set in place. We got our dovetail joint there set. Now this is pliable, so this can move around quite a bit. It's not that difficult to move up and down. The other thing then that we have done is we've taken our Loctite PL3, we put a dab everywhere the first strip comes up for the adhesion, and then we took the big stretch, which is the white adhesive for the GenStone, and we have put that in place. So the next process is going to be going ahead and putting up the ledger itself. And what I'm using is, I'm using a 2.5 inch deck screw because the ledger is a little bit thicker than normal. So let's go ahead and we'll start that process, and then I'll show you how that finishes up. So now a little closer look at the installation of the ledger with the closure strip. So that gives us a good seal. It's a good watertight seal. So this finishes up the project. It makes things look really nice. Now we have gone ahead and just to show you, we've got the other portions here finished. Again, the closure strips and the seals on top. Come around our corner. And then we're coming down the side.
Thanks for watching.
And as always, feel free to give us a call if you have any questions about adding GenStone to your steel building.